everyone, and welcome to TR's Devices Business Quarterly Research Highlights and Outlook webcast, outlining the recent results of the Devices Benchmark. My name is Allison Crawford, and I will be your host for today's session. In 35 minutes, Senior Analyst Ken Hires will delve into the trends driving the results featured in the 3Q12 Computing Benchmark to which you subscribe, following a Q&A of these trends and how they will affect you. Before we get started, I'd like to cover a few housekeeping items with you. First, we will be recording today's session and posting it on our YouTube site, TBI channel. We encourage you to visit our channel to watch this presentation or any of the others that we've posted. Second, we'd like to hear your opinions and thoughts on the materials we're presenting. Please questions or comments to the Q&A or chat function, and we'll address them at the end of the presentation. Or if you'd like to set up a client query for more detailed discussion, please reach out directly to Ken at the end of the webinar to set up a discussion. Third, we'll send out the list to everyone registered for today's webcast within 24 hours of the conclusion of the webinar. You can find the slides as well as other thought leadership pieces on our decks and commentaries on SlideShare at www.slideshare.net/TBR_market_insight. Let me introduce Ken Hires, a resident mobile devices guru who has been working in the devices space for over 15 years. His instant expertise has helped several of the largest device manufacturers identify new opportunities and revenue streams. And with that, let me hand this over to Ken.
Thanks, and to all of you that are here today. I'm here to talk to you today about TBR's newly published business quarterly benchmark and the trends that we see for the computing device industry in the coming quarters. To talk to you about the trends that are affecting the computing devices industry. First, I'll talk to you about overarching device trends. Then you about new emerging competitors in the computing devices space, the Chinese vendors and how they're shaping the computing devices landscape. And then I'll talk to you about the PC industry. While 8 does offer new opportunities to reach customers, most opportunities won't be realized until the second half of this year and into 2014. I'll also talk about the tablet market, and tablet design is creating new alternatives on the iPad for consumers. I'm going to talk to you about smartphones. It continues to dominate overall unit sales and continue to do so for the foreseeable future. But profits from devices running the OS are captured by Samsung. On the low end, will squeeze long-standing brands like HTC, NoRim, and to extinction. So my name is Ken Hires, Senior Analyst in TBR's Computing Research Practice. My focus is on computing devices, that's PCs, tablets, and smartphones, and the systems that are enabled over these devices. To take you through our latest computing devices benchmark, third quarter of 2012, and the implications of market trends for 2013 and beyond. Attention is drawn from that benchmark. TBR's Computing Devices Benchmark is a quarterly report. It reviews the performance of each of the companies that we cover in the computing space and how other companies have performed in comparison to each other across specific areas. Versus PC, tech, and smartphone vendors, and it provides our strategic assessment of how each of these companies are performing individually and as a group. It also provides our perspective on the direction of the computing industry. So the agenda for today, I'll present our view of the devices platforms, I'll provide outlook for 2013, and I'll key slides in the PC, tablet, and smartphone space. Next, please. Start with a picture view. The industry is growing rapidly, and that's because more people are using IT-related devices and services to do basic communication and consumption of content. And the devices and services are less expensive than they ever were before, and we'll talk about why on the device side this is the case in just a little bit. And it's growing rapidly because they're spending more of their time using these devices to do more things. Most of their waking hours Most of our waking hours are spent using some of these devices. So we're moving rapidly now. Talking about where TBR thinks things are going. But first, I wanted to talk about some of the ways we think about these things. We're an evidence-based business. We do analysis from hard data. We have expertise in financial modeling and primary research. And to leverage these data, we go beyond merely plotting trends. We have to think about a big picture, and we come to this complex, interrelated industry from a points of view. So to explain that point of view, or to give you some perspective, it seems helpful to use evolution as a metaphor for the development of new offerings, and especially true of hardware now. New devices evolve out of older things. Sometimes they split into several different devices. PC evolved into desktops and laptops, and sometimes they combine. As phones include aspects of other devices like, well, obviously phones, but PDAs, MP3 players, cameras, and more devices. They're like organisms, and organisms, as they fill niches for end users. No longer fill these niches, they have, or die off, like most of the MP3 players. Organisms, they compete with other devices that may be better suited for all part of their niche. And smartphones planted PCs for mobile email reading and web browsing. There needs to be a viable evolutionary path from one niche to another. Just leap a new niche. So each of these organisms live on one or another platform. In the case of the devices we're talking about today, that's Windows, Apple, Google, and even Amazon. So we can think of these as our ecosystems. And these systems are moving around each other, bumping into each other. They're transferring devices and applications and people from one platform to another. In each platform, we see that each platform is secure, relatively. Each platform has a power base. And at least of Google and Amazon, the power base isn't even the platform itself. These will gain, and some will lose devices and users, but all of them are going to be, they're going to continue to be important. So each platform is faced with a challenge. They attract new devices and users. They have to keep the ones they already have, and that is that they be open. Since most users live on more than one platform at once, these platforms have to play well with each other. And that's the most difficult task for each of them. So what we'll talk about today is how various parts of the ecosystems are evolving and how they're taking advantage of changing circumstances and opportunities to better compete for customers. Then about TBR's view of the overall device platform landscape, I talk about the impact of new entrants to the market. And these are Chinese vendors, which are rapidly growing their market share. Three in particular, Huawei, Lenovo, and ZTE, are rapidly expanding the smartphone, tablet, and in the case of Lenovo, the PC market. They're coming at the expense of slow-moving incumbents, and going to continue to accelerate through the year and beyond. So for the most part, potential targets are emerging markets, particularly BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, and China. But their actions are global. Huawei and ZTE are increasing smartphone market share across the BRIC markets and emerging markets. And they're those, and will continue to use them as springboards to extend to developed markets. Lenovo is the market share lead PCs, and it's using its dominance to leverage brand and strength to become a smartphone leader in China and to sell to other BRIC and largest mobile device and PC market. In 2012, it accounted for 300 million smartphone sales and 80 million PC sales. And for these devices, for mobile devices and computer products, is in sales volume growth. Even as developed markets are experiencing sluggish PC sales, the mobile market is going to become, in developed markets, going to become more of a replacement market. Not this year, but soon. Emerging markets are the growth engines for computer device vendors, and they're served to propel the emergence of these new market leaders from China. Vendors, they face strong competition from certain incumbents. It's the world-leading smartphone vendor has launched its brand and its strength to become the best-selling smartphone vendor in China in 2012, where and it's earning a commanding share of % of the Indian smartphone market. And Apple, well, it remains the most profitable smartphone vendor in the world. It higher price premiums for its devices in emerging markets than in developed ones. But momentum is strongest for China-based vendors who will use their growing strength to expand markets and from there to develop markets. Let's go to slide 6, please. Let's see how the PC vendors stack up against each other in terms of growth and revenue. In the second half of 2012, emerging market demand for low-cost PCs supported growth for vendors like Asus and Lenovo, and Apple remained the revenue leader in premium PC sales. In the first half of this year, it's going to be a transitional period for PC vendors. Windows will continue to disrupt PC demand, causing around a variety of form factors and use cases. But as 8 is tested and evaluated in the market, with PC sales and tablet sales for the platform are going to increase as customers look for opportunities to move their workforce. And we think that the improved functionality of Windows 8 tablets PC sales as well. So, and Lenovo were able to sustain PC growth year to year as a result of aggressive PC pricing to help drive increased share in markets like Russia, and America. And businesses need PC purchases in anticipation of Windows 8. As well as increased uncertainty around the fourth quarter PC spending environment. So we expect that the adoption of Windows 8 is going to be slow, and there's not going to be any significant change to the PC market until the last half of this year. I'll also point out Fujitsu saw the highest year revenue growth in the quarter, and 8.1%, which lifted increased demand among corporate customers, especially strong sales in the financial sector. And that performance in the commercial space offsets declining demand, falling prices in the consumer space. Let's go to 7. The PC market remains sluggish for the second half of 2012, and growth is going to remain the norm for this year. Users have been slow to embrace Windows 8. We believe that low growth will continue through much of this year, and that businesses and consumers are going to be hesitant to adopt Windows 8 devices. Users are going to be wary of spending upward of $800 for this as yet an unproven platform. Commercial users are going to evaluate Windows 8, various form factors, before making significant purchase decisions. And remember that many of them are still using older versions of Windows. They haven't even moved to Windows 7. So they're still in between in their upgrade cycle. Consumers following enterprises will aggressively embrace Windows 8 this year. They introduced new types of PCs, and I'm thinking of things like Lenovo Twist, the ThinkPad, a touch screen notebook with a full screen, and devices like that. And with the Windows 8 PCs and notebooks, with the flexibility of a touch screen for specific tasks, users who've become accustomed to touch-based computing with smartphones. And from a system view, Windows 8 is the first major platform to fully bridge the gap between tablets and PCs. Windows 8 tablets, I should say, businesses will have a viable tablet offering that provides enhanced portability and touch interface of the tablet. And it's also gives them the familiarity and functionality of a traditional PC. So while business users will need to evaluate Windows 8 tablets before making sizable purchase decisions, we have the broader choice of form factors going to strengthen Windows 8's position in the business community in 2013 and ultimately propel sale of PCs and Windows 8 tablets. So slide 8. There we go. So here are the three key vendors in the global PC space in 3Q. Apple achieved strong Mac portable sales during the quarter, and that for 77% of its PC sales. That had to offset weak desktop sales as consumers waited for the Mac portfolio refresh. Believes that Apple is going to see strong sales going forward, result of recent refreshes to its notebook and desktop portfolios, but limited supply of Apple's new iMac products is going to challenge the company's growth potential for PCs. Apple maintained its strategy of building market share through its low-cost, large-end devices, target emerging markets in India and China and Russia and Brazil. We believe Lenovo's growth continued in the fourth quarter, and believe that it pushed it to become the #1 global PC manufacturer. However, Lenovo operates at a lower operating margin than competitors to sustain its growth momentum. Improved margin will become a more important goal going forward for them. And PC revenue for HP declined in the quarter as a result of tablets erode traditional PC market share, as well as the increased competition from the lower-priced rivals. Now, let's go to the next slide and look at tablets. The relative performance of tablet vendors in the third quarter. As done historically, since the tablet segment was introduced in 2010, it's the space. Revenue fell nearly 12% sequentially in the quarter, as customers waited for new products from Apple's and for the new Windows 8 tablets from other vendors. Apple accounted for 84% of the total benchmark tablet revenue during the quarter. It had sales fell 17.6% sequentially in the quarter, but that was due to customers anticipating the announcement of the iPad mini. Despite the increased availability of the Windows 8 in the fourth quarter, the devices did not impede Apple's tablet business in the short term. And go forward, as a platform matures and prices become more competitive in the second half, that may change. The joint venture between Asus and Google, the Nexus 7 Android tablet, sparked significant uptake in Asus's tablet sales. It boosted 193% sequentially. Asus claimed that it shipped nearly 1 million units a month, and that supported by strong seasonal consumer demand. Many device vendors have yet to generate any significant traction in the tablet space, such as Acer, HP, Lenovo, and Dell. They're investing in Windows 8 to capitalize on the convergence of PCs and tablets, rather than compete directly in the consumer space with forms like iOS and Android. We expect them to see stronger growth from these products in the second half of 2013, particularly for the business segment, who want to take advantage of Windows 8's full business functionality. Now, to the next slide. A new trend a second half of last year. There's introduced new tablet designs. They look to the Apple iPad for inspiration, driven by several factors, including pricing, the enter Windows 8, cross-fertilization between tablets and smartphones. With new designs, the second half of 2012 target higher volume sales with sub-$200 tablets, which are direct competition with Apple in the premium tablet space. Now, these leaders, like Amazon, are sacrificing device profitability in order to secure higher margin, and they're deferring their revenue streams through content subscriptions and other service sales. We're seeing signs now with Amazon's results yesterday that they may be on the right path and we'll begin to see results from that strategy. Windows gives buyers a premium alternative to Apple's iPad. It does by offering PC capabilities in a tablet form factor. But the price of at least the initial Windows 8 tablet offerings put devices out of reach of most consumers. As tablet prices come down in 2013, they're appealing to consumers. But this is going to take time. In 2012, tablet manufacturers provided customers with more choices by introducing tablet designs that offer differentiated services, features, content, and hardware to chip away at Apple's dominant share. It's been primarily used by other manufacturers for their own designs since its introduction in 2010. With few exceptions, so 7-inch Kindle Fire, most tablets follow that design layout of the iPad, at least in their physical dimensions. The development of these new tablet form factors is driven by vendors' recognition that competing against the iPad with similar designs and immediate comparisons to Apple's tablet forces the perception that the iPad is the best choice. Apple's willingness to use legal measures to protect its intellectual property rights has also prompted vendors to explore new tablet designs as well. So, the success of new tablet designs, hybrid smartphone tablets like the 5.5-inch Samsung Galaxy Note 2 employs stylus input into a new direction in device design, in which tablets will come in a wide variety of sizes, which will target large but discrete market segments. Additional input methods such as active pens, detached keyboards, they're more important as differentiators. Let consumers create content rather than just consume it. And this is going to drive non-iPad tablet sales in 2013 and beyond. Next slide. So, facing intense competition from the tablet space, are looking to Windows 8 as a way to differentiate themselves from the market segment leader. In the third quarter, a number of vendors announced different Windows 8 tablets, and they're available in the fourth quarter, or in some cases are just entering the market in the first half of this year. Companies such as HP, Dell, and Lenovo are going to leverage their success with PCs in the commercial space to deliver tablets fill the needs of businesses, wiring the appeal of a consumer-friendly Windows 8 platform. We anticipate volume adoption of the Windows 8 tablets to begin to occur until the latter half of this year, when businesses have had time to evaluate the devices, ensure adequate security and compatibility with existing IT infrastructure. Let's slide and shift our focus to smartphones. Chinese vendors are growing their share, but Samsung dominate and continue to dominate revenue for the future. Some vendors' revenue an average of 118.4% year-to-year in the third quarter. Demand from consumers, emerging markets fueled double-digit annual increases in unit shipments from nearly all vendors. Sales success in the third quarter was fueled by torrid sales of its Galaxy 3 smartphones. 18 million of the devices in the quarter, and it owned the iPhone 4S as the best-selling smartphone. Slide. Android is the global smartphone platform. It's priced Android smartphones are transforming the way that consumers in emerging markets interact with mobile devices. Process, they're driving data revenue growth for operators. Smartphone manufacturers are increasingly targeting emerging markets to drive sales growth. Samsung reports that 40% of its smartphones, mostly Android devices, are sold in emerging markets. And overall, Android OS devices will own at least 3/4 of total smartphone sales in emerging markets in years. The operating system is available for free, so smartphones running the OS can be made cheaply, and that makes it more affordable than iOS and Windows Phone smartphones to manufacture and ultimately for consumers. Samsung is benefiting from the growing demand for smartphones in emerging markets, and it's leveraging its brand strength, its distribution channels, and its integrated supply chains to develop lower-priced Android smartphones. Smartphones, such as the Galaxy Pocket, are available for as low as $100, and they increase the appeal to customers looking to upgrade from less capable feature phones. However, sensitive emerging market customers are more willing to buy lower quality but less expensive smartphones, and those are coming from vendors such as Huawei, Lenovo, ZTE. Each of them offer Android smartphones below $100. It forced Samsung to either compromise on features if they're going to match those particular vendors on price. So let's go to the slide. Apple sales were hindered in the third quarter by delayed purchases as customers waited for the iPhone 5 to become available. The fourth quarter increased as supply constraints eased as unit shipments caught up to consumer customer demand. Despite that, Apple still has a difficulty meeting the high customer demand for its new devices. Smartphone unit shipments in the third quarter climbed 143% sequentially. And adoption of its low-cost devices, China-based consumers, put Lenovo ahead of all vendors except Samsung in the third quarter. However, in the fourth quarter of the year, T believes that Lenovo did pass Samsung unit shipments in China, and that's significant. Leveraging its protect and attack strategy to gain further market share in China, and employ that same strategy to capture new share in emerging markets such as India and Brazil. Now, when Samsung achieved the best ever quarterly profits in the third quarter and fourth quarter, as smartphone sales made it the global mobile phone manufacturer for another consecutive quarter. It accounted for 70% of its corporate profits and 31% of the industry's total smartphones in the quarter. This sales and profitability growth has been driven by a shift to high-end smartphones, which in 2011. It tended to steadily increase its share in smartphones throughout this year and ongoing. Dominates smartphone sales globally, but is looking for new markets to expand into. It's growing demand in emerging markets such as Africa, Latin America, and Southeast Asia. Its product line to include these lower-cost smartphones at as low as $100. Investing in sales and marketing as well as developing localized content for its devices. By the way, is going to become more important for Samsung as it targets these specific markets. Now, let's go to the next slide and look at some of the topics we're going to cover in the next edition of the benchmark. The PC and tablet side, we're going to be keeping an eye on Windows 8 and whether it's gaining traction. Look at app stores and whether more apps are coming to tablets. Examine how cloud services are changing the PC tablet landscape and how PC and tablet vendors are targeting specific verticals to grow this. Let's go to the slide. So we're going to be looking at for smartphones and tablets. And, vendors positioning themselves to take advantage of emerging market opportunities. Phone screen is going to get is 6 inches the limit. Strategies for deploying tablets. Platforms and device vendors responding to the changing security needs. So that's what we'll be covering in next quarter. Now to the next slide. To conclude by returning to the points I brought up at the beginning of this presentation. I spoke about the Chinese vendors and how they clean up the computing device landscape. I think that over the course of the next 2 years, these vendors are going to firmly ensconce themselves as leaders in emerging markets, while also focusing on expanding into developed markets. I talked about the PC industry and how Windows 8 offers vendors new opportunities to reach customers. But these customers won't be realized until the second half of this year and in 2014. But I can add, PCs are not going away. Bills are going to increase over recent historical standards. In addition to sharing user time and budgets with new devices, these are lasting longer. The replacement cycle is increasing. And this lengthening replacement cycle is important for periods by innovations like touch screens, but overall, the trend is a lengthening replacement cycle. And global economic growth is the driver of PC growth, but that's offset by long replacement cycles and replacement of secondary PCs by tablets. I should also point out that Windows tablets are PCs. Counted as tablets, they essentially have 1% cannibalization rate. So for those reasons, we won't see absolute PC numbers increasing. And at the tablet market, innovation in tablet design is creating new alternatives beyond the iPad. So let's have the fastest percentage rate of growth, and that will continue for at least a year. That growth rate is based on a lower base number or denominator than smartphones. More phone sales are being made, though, than tablet sales, but they're growing faster. The fastest growing part of the tablet industry is for low-priced tablets, and I think this is going to continue to be true, even accelerate. Rates of higher-priced tablets, including full-size iPads, is going to slow. The education and the development market is an area that's ripe for growth right now. The companies that dominate in the next 2 years will have a substantial long-term franchise. And they talk to you about smartphones, and Android currently dominates overall unit sales, and it's going to continue to do so for the foreseeable future. But profits from devices running the OS were captured by Samsung. News on the low end will squeeze long-standing brands like HTC, Nokia, and RIM, and the possibility for extinction for at least some of these brands does exist. So smartphone growth is going to continue to stay high for at least the next couple of years. So the decrease in the growth rate will have to occur because there's a higher base of smartphones to start with. Total number of new sales will continue to be very high. Despite the fact that the penetration is past 50% in mature markets, because this is being driven by lower penetration in emerging markets. Replacement cycles for smartphones are short, and they're going to continue to be short, at least for the next several years. So this is the formal part of my presentation. Again, I'm a senior analyst in Dar's computing group. I really want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to you today. And I'd like to open up and take some of your questions.
Ren, we've had 2 questions come in through so far. The first question we got is, you talk about Windows 8 will take off in 2013, but so far it's been a pretty poor seller. What makes you think that things are going to change this year?
The new platform get off to a slow start this year. Like I discussed earlier, this is because it was just introduced, number one, in the fourth quarter, and so consumers and businesses, they're just getting their hands on the new platform, to evaluate it. I think the bigger question here is consumers and businesses will use Windows in the future. These sales have been weak, and they'll likely remain weak for much 2013. Look at the picture here. What we see, as I talked about, is that tablets are cannibalizing PC sales more and more, and that's particularly the second PC in the home. The PC market is moving from a growth market to a replacement market. Businesses and consumers are going to continue to replace their older PCs. As the upgrade cycle for PCs becomes longer, consumers look to the tablets to take over the applications that are traditionally done on PCs. But look at Windows 8, platform that's made for tablets as well as PCs. And Windows 8 tablets, particularly the ones running Windows 8 Pro, are going to be introduced in next week or so. They're fledged PCs. And these are that are able to do anything that a PC can do. And if we think about it from that perspective, we see Windows 8 growing as tablet sales, even as older PCs are replaced as Windows 8 PCs. So that answers your question. There are others?
One so far. Samsung is the best-selling Android phone, and they just announced they'll be making phones this year based on the new Tizen operating system. Why are they doing that, and what does that say about their relationship with Google?
I like that one. We talked about this a lot at TBR, and when we look at Samsung's Tizen OS play, we need to think about it from a market perspective, where Samsung fits in relationship to Google and Android. The early theory here is that HTC or Motorola or one of the other Android vendors, they're one hit device away from taking Samsung's share. And maybe the new Motorola X phone is going to hit, and it comes the next Galaxy. Samsung, from its perspective, has to be afraid of that. I mean, that theory ignores Samsung's strengths. Highly vertically integrated OEM. It's got substantial marketing prowess. It's got a cash hoard that it can put behind device development and marketing. If you're Samsung, you'd be cognizant that at least this is a possibility, and you're aware of that. And I think it does have some basis. From some perspective, here's how I would think of it: a bit of commoditization of the of the smartphone market. They want their business to become like the PC business. Which for years now has been a rush towards the bottom pricing wise. So let's remember, we're heading as the Chinese vendors gain prominence, in the smartphone space. So Samsung wants a larger share of software apps revenue to add more value, and it gets very little through Android. And I also add that Samsung is pretty wary of Google's tie-up with Motorola and good intentions. Samsung a way to control its own destiny. So I think that, if you get it, Samsung introduced a handful of devices into emerging markets, based on Tizen in the later half of this year. And if they're successful, it's going to make more. If they're not, it's going to adjust. It gives Samsung a hold card in negotiating with Google or Android, and it lets it develop a potential new growth business around devices that it controls directly. So I think you need to think of Tizen as an industry policy. It's really one that's relatively inexpensive from a pure software development perspective, but gives them some leverage when they look at the market and when they work with their partners. So I hope that answers your question.
Great. We had 3 more questions come in, Ken. The next question we had, what impact do you expect Dell going private to have on the market?
It's also an excellent question. Does that allow them to, I'd like to go and ask, one of my colleagues were here who have even more, than that, but I mean, at least it allows them to not be as focused on short-term results. The industry is in the core of undergoing evolution, revolution if you want. If you're Dell, you've got some, as I said in this presentation, some harder quarters to go through. There's, PC sales are not going to take off immediately. You can focus on develop some of these innovative devices that I talked about, knowing that it's going to be a longer-term process. You focus, if you're Dell, on developing some tablets, again, knowing that it's a longer-term process. So instead of focusing on short-term results, you can develop a longer-term strategy. And I think that's part of what's going on here, and the idea of Dell going private. It gives them more flexibility to respond to long-term changes in the market rather than immediate short-term shareholder concerns.
We've actually had 2 questions come in from one person, so I'm going to ask the first question, Ken, and then I'll come back for the second question. The first question is, The Economist recently wrote an article questioning whether Lenovo's protect and attack strategy is tenable in the long term. What are your thoughts on this? How much does the strategy rely on things like their strategy to pursue sales through U.S. retail outlets or smartphone sales?
I read that article as well, and I thought it was good. In fact, I forwarded it to all of my colleagues. Things that article talked about. So we hit those. One is it's because they align nicely with what I've talked about so far today. Lenovo has, if you look at the emerging market perspective, in China they have exclusive relationships where they sell their PCs through retailers that only carry their PCs and only ship their PCs to those retailers. That also includes smartphones and other devices. The strategy works extremely well in China, where it's a huge brand. It's hugely popular. They're more flexibility when they go to other markets. And again, in India, they're not forcing those exclusive arrangements. What I'm seeing here is that Lenovo is quite flexible about doing both, and however they can get it. And as we talked about today, they're also willing to accept extremely low margins. As I said earlier, I think that the pursuit of extremely low margins is not going to be a long-term strategy. At a certain point, if you're a global world-class vendor, you have to start achieving returns that are closer to your competitors. I think it was going to evolve to that business model, but right now, what they is that they have to get their sales into as many markets as possible, and low price devices is one part of that strategy, and they're going to continue to pursue that, at least in the short to midterm.
A second part of the question, also, how is Lenovo achieving success with such a great variety of devices being produced? Is tenable since they aren't achieving same scale of single devices?
I'll repeat the last half of that, Allison. You broke up a little bit.
So the part was, is this tenable since they aren't achieving the same scale of single devices?
I think that, again, you look at Lenovo, what they're doing in different markets, and is the one we have to focus on when we talk about the multitude of devices. Is this billion-plus strong market where they test devices and new features for these devices that they think will appeal to other markets. They then move out, and we know about their PCs, but their smartphones, their tablets, and even their smart TV sell quite well. So, the best products in those markets, they will export. Right now, they're primarily a PC-driven business. And when we look at their PCs, they've offered, quite a lot of different PCs already on the Windows 8 platform. We talked about the Yoga earlier today. That strategy is to say, let's go out and find out what works. Instead of dictating to the market what the market should buy, they're willing to put different products out there and find out where they get the most traction. And I think driven by that, they will then go and some more on the products that are getting more traction, and then you'll see those sales expand, and other products will necessarily receive less of a focus. I think it reflects what we might call more of an Asian perspective, because we see this with other vendors, not just from China, but for some Samsung as well, where if you get the overall market, you try and develop a lot of different products, and you find out what the consumer wants, and that's where you put your effort. It helps if you've got a nice-sized cash flow, which they do.
In the interest of time, we are a little bit over. There's one more question in the queue that we'll answer offline. So I want to thank you, Ken, and thanks for everyone for sending in your questions today. I want to encourage you to follow Ken and TBR on Twitter at the handles listed here, as well as check our pages on Slideshare at YouTube and join our TBR LinkedIn group. All the URLs are listed here for you guys to take a look at. Before I sign off, I'd like to ask you to take a quick say as you're exiting about today's webinar. Your feedback will help us improve the performance and the details we're giving you quarter to quarter, so any feedback would be great. I'm going to leave the chat function open for another 5 minutes or so. If there's any last-minute requests for follow-up questions or conversations, if we don't hear from you, we'll talk to you guys all next quarter, and have a great afternoon, everyone. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you.